$200K on an H-1B visa sounds like financial security. It's not. Research shows your non-sponsored peer earning $180K will accumulate $300,000 to $400,000 more in total earnings over the next 5 years. And the reason is mathematics, the mathematics of employer leverage, frozen salaries, and lost job mobility. In the next 10 minutes, we'll show you the exact numbers proving this trap exists, the mechanism behind it, and what the data tells us about the real cost of visa sponsorship in tech. By minute 6, I'll reveal the specific earnings comparison that shows why $200K on H-1B can be worth $150K less than it appears. This matters now because 2024 visa processing backlogs have intensified the trap. Switching employers just became even riskier. Let's start with what most tech workers don't know. H-1B visa sponsorship isn't compensation. It's leverage. And leverage, by definition, flows away from the employee. Here's the mechanism. You're hired at $200,000 annually. The company invests $5,000 to $15,000 in visa sponsorship fees, legal costs, and administrative overhead in year 1. They're not doing this altruistically. They're doing it because visa sponsorship creates a cage. The moment you're on that visa, your mobility collapses. You cannot job switch without starting the entire visa process over. You cannot leverage competing offers because any new employer has to restart the process, adding 6 to 18 months to your hiring timeline. You cannot negotiate a raise because the threat of leaving is neutralized by visa dependency. The data is stark. According to Levels.fyi, which collects anonymous salary data from thousands of tech workers, non-sponsored software engineers at major tech companies report average annual raises of 15% to 25% when they switch jobs every 18 to 24 months. In contrast, sponsored H-1B workers in the same role at the same companies report average annual raises of 3% to 5%, locked into their original salary band until the visa petition cycle resets. Let's quantify this trap over 60 months. Assume 2 equivalent software engineers at a major Bay Area tech company, both highly skilled, both hired in 2024. Worker A, sponsored H-1B, hired at $200,000 base salary. No stock options in this scenario, base salary only because the point is pure cash mobility. Year 1, $200,000. Year 2, $206,000, 3% raise. Year 3, $212,000, 183% raise. Year 4, $218,000, 545, 3% raise. Year 5, $225,000, 101, 3% raise. Total 5-year gross earnings, $1, 161, 826. Worker B, non-sponsored, hired at $180,000. Year 1, $180,000. After 18 months, switches jobs with a 15% raise, $207,000 new base. Year 3, $207,000. After another 18 months, switches again with a 20% raise, $248,400 new base. Year 5, $248,400. Total 5-year gross earnings, $1, 423,400. The gap, $261,574 in gross earnings. And this is conservative. We're not including stock options, bonus structures, or tax-advantaged negotiation points. We're just showing base salary cash. Now, here's where it gets worse. The locked-in H-1B worker doesn't just lose $260K in earnings, they lose optionality. Their $200K salary year after year becomes less competitive in absolute terms. The market for software engineers moves, salaries compound. In 2024, a mid-level software engineer with 2 job switches and 5 years of experience commands $240K to $280K in base salary at a competitive tech company. Our locked-in H-1B worker is still at $225K, 15 years of experience, 2 job switches behind the market curve, now stuck in a visa renewal cycle that makes switching even harder. Why does this happen? Because the visa process itself has become a bottleneck. According to USCIS data for 2024, the average processing time for an H-1B visa petition is 8 to 14 months, depending on the service center. Premium processing, which costs an additional $1,500 to $2,500 and speeds up approval to 15 days, is available, but only if your employer pays. And here's the leverage: your current employer pays for premium processing to keep you. A new employer, they're taking the risk of waiting 8 to 14 months. For a mid-level engineer, that's 8 to 14 months of salary lost, recruiting timeline extended, and uncertainty multiplied. Most new employers won't do it, so you stay. The data from Blind, a community platform where tech workers anonymously share salary and compensation data, shows this clearly. When stratified by visa status and job change frequency, H-1B workers report an average of 1-2 job changes over 5 years. Non-sponsored workers report 2-1 job changes. That single job change gap, compounded with 15-25% raise multipliers, explains the $260K to $400K cumulative earnings loss. But the trap goes deeper. There's a psychological component that amplifies the financial cage. Because you're on a visa, you're risk-averse. You can't afford to leave without another job lined up, and lining up another job requires a new employer willing to sponsor. Your negotiating position isn't just weakened, it's invisible. In a typical US tech labor market, if you have two competing offers, you leverage them against each other and typically gain 10% to 20% increase on your best offer. On H-1B, you have one offer, the one that comes with visa sponsorship. There is no leverage, there is no competing offer. The salary is what the salary is. Here's another dimension the data reveals: the tenure trap. According to SEC 10K disclosures from major tech companies Google, Meta, Amazon, Microsoft, the average tenure for visa-sponsored employees is 2 years. For non-sponsored US citizens, the average tenure is 1 year. Why? Because sponsored workers, after 4 years of being locked into 3-5% annual raises, have no incentive to stay but also fear the cost of leaving. They stay because the visa process is sunk cost, because leaving means starting over, and because the company has already extracted maximum value from their constrained negotiating position. By the time they can switch, they've lost compounding raises across the market. Let's talk about the 2024 acceleration. H-1B visa approval rates have tightened, processing times have extended, and employer leverage has intensified. In 2023, the USCIS received 884 H-1B applications for 85,000 visa slots, roughly a 9-1 lottery ratio. In 2024, that ratio has remained tight, and processing backlogs have grown. This means if you're locked into an H-1B and want to change employers, you're not just asking a new employer to wait 8 to 14 months for visa approval. You're asking them to accept a 9-1 lottery risk. Most won't, so the cage tightens. Now let's address the counterargument. But visa sponsorship gets me into the US. I couldn't earn $200K without it. This is true, and it matters. The value of the visa itself, the access to the US labor market, is real and substantial. But that value is not $200K annually. The value is the difference between what you'd earn in your home country and what you'd earn without visa sponsorship in the US. Let's say you're from India, and the equivalent role there pays $40K to $60K annually. The visa advantage is $140K to $160K in year 1. But after that, the advantage shrinks. By year 5, if you've made only 2 job switches and accumulated $260K less in earnings than your non-sponsored peer, the visa advantage is being consumed by the cage. Here's the critical point the data shows. H-1B sponsorship is a trade. You trade future earning mobility for immediate access. That trade is economically rational in year 1 and maybe year 2. But it becomes economically irrational by year 4 or 5, when the compounding earnings loss exceeds the present value of the visa access advantage. What should you do with this information? If you're considering accepting an H-1B sponsored role, run the numbers. Ask yourself, what's my true 5-year earnings trajectory on this visa versus if I stay in my home country or pursue a different immigration path, EB3, EB2, citizenship through other routes? What's the real cost of the employer leverage? And critically, what's my exit plan? Do I plan to apply for green card sponsorship, which often extends the locked-in period further as you remain dependent on the employer for visa status? Or do I plan to return home after the visa window? If you're currently on H-1B and have been locked into 3-5% annual raises for 3 or more years, the data suggests you should explore job switches, even with the visa processing risk. Because the opportunity cost of staying locked in now exceeds the cost of restarting the visa process with a new employer. The numbers don't lie. A $200K H-1B salary that compounds at 3-5% annually is worth $150K to $300K less in real 5-year earnings than a $180K non-sponsored salary that job hops at 15-25% raise multiples. The cage is real, the leverage is real, and the financial cost is quantifiable. $260K to $400K over 5 years, depending on your market segment and job switching success rate. If you want the full numbers and the implementation framework for evaluating visa sponsorship, the deep version is in my book, Top 1% Net Worth, link in the description. It includes the complete earnings calculator, case studies from 3 visa-sponsored workers in tech, and a decision framework for whether visa sponsorship makes sense in your specific situation. The biggest takeaway: high nominal salary and high real earnings are not the same thing when your employer controls your visa status. Before you accept a $200K H-1B role,